Meanwhile, I'm like standing in fucking Lowe's and Home Depot, like trying to buy a dishwasher and a refrigerator. And I'm like looking, I was like, wow, I just got an offer for 20 grand for this one JPEG. I should just, I could outfit my whole kitchen.
Yeah.
But then like I wanted to drive a robot in the metaverse.
Yeah. And so many people did that too.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
What is going on, ladies and gents? Welcome to Collectors Gone Digital. My name's Josh, and today's episode marks the first of a 3-part series. Now, I ended up having a 2.5-hour call with Klim from Nounish, who dropped on VeVe, and although it was supposed to be a private conversation, I actually ended up getting permission to share the following clips. So I've cut 2.5 hours down to 1 hour, and I've broken parts 1 and 2 into 30 minutes each. Part 3 will be a full breakdown of the project and their history done by me. Now, before we get started, I do want to say that I think Klim is someone who everyone in the community should know about. I've said it before, he is extremely passionate about what he does, and you guys will see in parts 1 and 2, he shares lots of alpha and some pretty awesome stories. So if you guys do enjoy the content, make sure to let me and him know. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and as always, grab a drink, grab a snack, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Oh, and by the way, I'm dropping part 2 tomorrow.
How do we take all of the stuff that we know, which is creating characters, building worlds, and then also manufacturing physical products and experiences for people to enjoy in different ways, not just like, I'm gonna buy this thing, I'm gonna put it on the shelf, well, Frank was doing a lot of collectibles. He's also a tinkerer, and I've been doing collectibles my entire professional career. I've also been doing a lot of toy inventing. So play patterns are incredibly important. Like, what do you do with this thing besides having it sit on your shelf and collect dust? Like, the most popular pieces in that collection, of the 6 that we dropped, were the noggles, right? Mm-hmm. We sort of my strategy is to give something like that free to as many people as possible, so they can plaster it everywhere, like your Obey Giant sticker, and people are like, what the hell is that?
Yeah.
Because you're not limited by 9-month production times, and you're not limited to I can't make this because it's going to be $10,000. You're just kind of like, yeah, I'm going to make this because it's fun, and
right.
So it's like, you can just, the stuff that we know how to do, which is people that have to come from traditional entertainment, gaming, toys, collectibles, is stuff that a lot of the people that are just learning about this stuff are just figuring it out, and yeah, it's like this is definitely many convos that I've had with Frank, and it's kind of I miss that dude every day, because I've done, I think I've made more projects with him than anybody else on the planet.
Wow.
Outside of printing. We literally back 20 years ago, we made rugs, we made carpets for him.
Oh wow! So before you even got into the space, you
Oh yeah. I was working with Frank before he joined Kid Robot.
Okay.
So I was working with him, developing his products for toys, for for Black Book Toy. We made the 𝗕𝗵𝗵𝗄𝗃 figure. We did tons of other stuff, that hate ball, mm-hmm. That mad ball looking guy, mm-hmm. That Black Book put out. A lot of these things we kind of developed together, and we had a pretty solid workflow where I knew exactly what his style looks like and what he wants to do, and that's kind of my workflow with most of the artists that we work with. Is I don't just treat everything as give me a drawing and we'll recreate it perfectly. I kind of look mm-hmm. at the art style and the artist's intent, mm-hmm. and then I just kind of reinterpret their drawing and then have them adjust it. But every artist is different. Ron is very loose with his stuffs, and he trusts me to just kind of take his sketch and turn it around in 3D, and then he just kind of makes comments, and we just kind of try to work from there. Right. Frank was like that too, where he just kind of let me do, he'd give me an idea. I want to make a robot rabbit, right? and he'd send me a sketch of what he was looking for, and then I just kind of like extrapolate his design aesthetic and then add some of my own, and then we just kind of go back and forth and kind of find a nice happy medium, which makes the thing awesome. Like the 𝗕𝗏𝗧 was like an example of that, where he had like one version and then it like wound up being something completely different, but still the same, you know. And then, you know, like guys like Jermaine who know exactly what they want to do, right? Jermaine knows exactly what he wants, so it's just a matter of like taking his, you know, like his rabbit character and then turning it into a 3D mock-up, and then he would make very detailed notes on how exactly he wanted everything to be.
Very interesting. See,
yeah.
See, what I find really interesting about your background is when you got introduced on VeVe with the nouns, I feel like something that our community didn't understand was your involvement in stuff like that, like the choices with Jermaine Rogers and like the 𝗕𝗏𝗧 and stuff like that. What are some other pieces that are already on VeVe that you've kind of had your hands in?
So both like Jermaine's choices and the specimen, the
bear.
Yeah, the bear.
Right.
Like we did those, and then, you know, they turned those into physicals. All of Ron's serial killers.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Okay, those are some of my favorite pieces actually on the platform still. I love those things.
I really, really enjoyed those. Like I love Ron's work. I also like fucking with it a little bit because he kind of like, you know, his you know, way of working, he just kind of like has the really great thoughtful concept and the humor and the attitude, and then he does like his sketch or his artwork, and then it kind of, you know, I've been fortunate enough where he's kind of, I think he like trusts me enough to just kind of let me do my own thing, so he doesn't have to like worry about like what does the back of this guy looks like, what does the side of this guy look like. So I just kind of take his initial cues of what he wants to accomplish, and then I just kind of add a bunch of shit to it, and then he sort of decides whether or not it works or doesn't. Like we did the Uncle Scam figures for 𝗕𝗏𝗧, and you know, it was like originally it was like a very different looking design, and I was like, you know, it would be kind of cool if he was holding something in his other hand but kind of behind his back. And then Ron's like, yeah, it's a good idea. I was like, well, what if it was a burger with money on it instead of lettuce, you know? And he was like, oh yeah, that's great, let's try it, you know. And then you try it and it just kind of works. And then because of how Ron's, you know, painting skills are so incredible, that he's able to take like the toy design, or in those cases like the rendering, and paint them, you know, and adjust them to you know, from the toy to like canvas, where it looks like it was the other way around. Like it doesn't look like the canvas came from the toy, it looks like the toy came from the canvas. And it's still like, you know, it's still like 100% his design, so that's like super cool. But it was, you know, basically it's like you know, Jermaine stuff, the two pieces, Ron stuff, Frank, you know, is like all 𝗕𝗏𝗧, because those are done from the assets that we made for Kidrobot.
Okay.
Because basically, like, once Frank came in, there was no uniform asset library for Dunnies and Labbits at Kidrobot, so he had us basically recreate everything from scratch.
Okay.
That way, everything was consistent. All the designs were on point. You know, once VeVe gets back into like a flow of creating more products that the community can handle, and then also their internal teams can handle. You know, because right now it's, you know, they're still building the plumbing and the freaking stairs, you know, and putting in the electrical, you know, and adding tiles to the roof. It's like the whole reason why this project is alive is because David is a stubborn motherfucker. Vision, right? And it's like, and there are people behind him that support it, and then, you know, they're not looking to raise money, and they're not really answering to investors, you know, as far as I know, where people are like, hey, we need you to be profitable this year in order to keep Disney, Marvel, Lamborghini, Louis Vuitton, like all of these high-end brands and all these other brands that they're talking to, happy and ready to onboard, you have to make sure that the audience that comes in doesn't get scammed, or like these little kids that come in don't get robbed. You know, my understanding of why and how this thing is going to work in the future, just by based on my internal like brain farting, is that the closed garden ecosystem is the only way that something like this can function in a safe way. Because honestly, man, like, you can't be decentralized and free for all-y with Disney. Like, just like you can't just like go to Disney World and like pull your dick out and take a shit on a ride. Like, you can't do that. I love VeVe, and I'm busting my ass to be on the platform. Like, David approached me in 2018 at DesignerCon, right, when I had my booth and I was like out selling my toys, and you know, we had a line, people buying stuff, and David, you know, I think Dan was with him, but David approached me and he like hung out and we talked for a little bit, and he's like, I want to talk to you about this digital collectible platform. And at the time, there was like 7 other digital collectible platforms that approached me, right? There was like QB and all these other Joe Schmoes that are like, oh, we could take your 3D assets and we could do all this stuff, just give us the models. And I'm like, I'm not going to give you my models. I don't know who you are, what your plans are, because these are my babies, right? And David explained what he was doing, and it was like, I was really curious about it. But at the time, like, you know, you go to these conventions to sell toys and try to drum up business for your brands, and at the time I was like, you know, digital collectibles are on my mind because I know that's where all the future is, right? That's where, but I was busy trying to sell toys to people, and I had a line, and he hung out for like 20 minutes and he said he'd come back, and he came back, and I was still busy, I think, at the time. And David's like, I'll come back. And then we just kind of never connected until, you know, a couple of years later. I think what, in my opinion, like what would help with the creative projects that aren't big brand licenses, you know, where you get basically DesignerCon inside of VeVe, is to have, you know, somebody that is quote unquote like a brand ambassador first, that comes from both spaces, that understands and has relationships with these artists who they trust, right? And then a team that is dedicated to taking these creative experiences and building out a separate, almost like a separate company within a company. Because like, everybody's like, oh shit, you know, the unboxing experience on VeVe isn't what the unboxing experience is for these other brands, right? It's like, you know, even like, you know, my friend Nick at Clanosaurs, like their unboxing experience for their card games is fucking epic, right? They just shared that everything's gamified, everything's fun, everything's got music and it pops. There needs to be like a small core team, almost like, you know, like the Blue Angels for the Air Force, right? Or like the show car department, which develops blue sky concepts within the eco. And this is not just VeVe, this is like any company. Nobody's doing it because nobody's got the money. Like, used to be like Hasbro's and Mattel's had blue sky groups, right, where they'd have like people inside that were like most brilliant geniuses with design, concepts, mechanism, technology, whatever, and their entire job would just be like to dream up new shit, you know? Then that became expensive and the ROI wasn't as high as people thought, and they thought like, oh, you know, we could save money by cutting some of these people out and just license inventions from other inventors. So, you know, they had outside R&D groups develop. Like, this is what this space, not just VeVe, but all like the entire digital ecosystem, like, you know, everybody. What does 10 years from now look like? How are people going to collect these digital assets in 10 years when resources are really scarce, when most people aren't going to be living in giant houses that have, you know, 2, 3, 4 rooms where they can just store the boxes for their shit.
Right.
You know, it's like, where is the collectible space? Because people are still going to collect stuff. People are still going to play games. Kids are still going to play with toys. Characters are going to matter. IP is going to matter. Content's going to matter. Storytelling is going to be really important. Connections to other people and sharing collectible experiences is going to matter. So like, what does that look like? And who's preparing for that? You know, it's like right now, you know, everybody's just new, building out infrastructure. Some people are just like cash grabbing and leaving. You know, it's like, you know, like I want to make a couple $1,000,000 and just peace out.
Yeah.
You know, like look what happened with Artifact Studios.
I know, it's so unfortunate.
They just like in my opinion, and like I don't know, I just saw some of the patents that Artifact had, and then the moment that Nike announced the buy, I saw some of the patent information. You know, Nike bought this company for the patents and for like some temporary clout. You know, because now Nike's got the rights to make digital sneakers. You go ahead, Adidas, you know, try to make digital shoes.
Did you see what they just did on Fortnite? Nike's now dropping digital shoes.
Yeah,
just exactly. Introduced it.
Yeah. And they probably, like within a year, they're probably gonna make all of the money back that they spent on Artifact. You know, I had some NFTs in there in a gallery, and it was like impossible to use. And then I got hacked and like that shit got stolen. So it was like somebody stole my showroom, right? Wow. So I was like, fuck, you know, here's a lesson learned. Like you have to wait for somebody to build the tech so these things don't happen. Because like, okay, so I'm just like fucking around finding out the hard way. But imagine, you know, you're a kid who's like, you know, a civilian, a new user coming into the space trying to do these things. And they're like, you know, it's like, you can't have these kids get robbed because the parents are going to get upset. Furniture is funny because what are you going to do? Your virtual ass is going to sit on a virtual couch.
Okay. So that's what I said, right?
Yeah,
so,
like,
because
so,
go ahead.
What to me, it's like, I was, you know, like, I'm kind of like thinking along those lines, like, how do you hang out with your 10 friends in a, you know, a Twitter Spaces like environment where you just hang out, you can like pull things out of thin air and like show somebody like, hey, look at this. So you can, you know, share screens, you can share images, you can pass somebody a model to play with, you can, you know, you can all wear masks or whatever, but it's like, where do you hang out? And that's why I kind of like Brock's fiches, right? Because you couldn't just hang out in a big fish tank.
Yeah.
Because then like you're not required to sit because you don't really have an ass, right? So it's like you're not required to sit. You could just float, right? And all of your friends can be fish because why not, right? And the DJ Octopus can be like wooka wooka wooka, you know. So like all that stuff, and I think that's also like a lot of the fun for all these things will start happening when you can just watch somebody else do it and then try, which is why I like gaming so popular. Like, who the fuck thought that you would spend more time watching other people play games than you playing the game? But you know, if you think back to like the old arcade times when you're kind of standing there waiting for your turn, you just crowd around somebody who's like kicking ass in Pac-Man. Right? Or you crowd around somebody kicking ass in pinball. It's like the same thing, except now people are doing it on a stadium. You know,
old, like former Olympic stadiums. I've been saying this since I started my channel. It all leads to gaming.
The Nouns esports teams. Have you watched those guys?
No, I haven't.
Nouns fun, like they just funded them like almost another $1 million.
Wow.
For a Smash team. They have like winning Smash team, they have Pokemon teams, they have like an old girl squad that they've sponsored. Like Nouns esports is the shit, man. It's like
the money that flows through esports is insane.
Yeah, and the attention that flows through esports is insane too. And I think like all of that stuff just kind of culminates in collectibles, digital culture, entertainment, and it all sort of mixes up together, you know, which is why like something like CloneX kind of bummed me out, because like I've been thinking along the same lines too, is like, you know, your virtual digital identity that's fully customizable. It becomes you. And like, they did it. Not only did they do it, they also, you know, because they were loosey-goosey and free with their assets, they let people have 3D assets of their characters. So people are just like really feel a sense of ownership of this, you know, IP, which is why people were okay with spending thousands of dollars on this PFP, tens of thousands in some cases, hundreds of thousands in a couple of, you know, because you bought something that was yours, right? And you had like this cool Murakami thing, and then not only that, you could, that's your ID on in Web3. You're that guy. You're the guy with a squid head, right? But then like when you go into like, you know, right now it's like Roblox and fucking Fortnite, whatever, right? But eventually, like, that's going to be your whole digital identity. That's like who you're going to be in the bank. Like, that's the other thing too, is like when you're, and again, it's like it's missing, this is missing components from all of the Web3, is like there isn't a Web3 for Dummies course. Like there isn't a trusted resource where anybody, regardless of chain, project, or level of understanding of what Web3 is, can just go and learn the basics in a trusted, safe manner. You know, I actually think that that might be like a worthwhile thing for somebody like VeVe, or, you know, another community that's focused on education, to invest time and money in, to basically help onboard. You know, I mean, like you talk about free NFTs, right? As like tokens, you're like, oh, I got this thing. So maybe, you know, it's like if you teach people about the benefits of what it is that you're doing, they learn about how exciting, how useful, how fantastically how fantastic the potential is. The Web3 just kind of started, like really took off 2021.
Yeah, 2020,
right?
2021.
And why did that happen? That happened because artists discovered NFTs. And like there may be other reasons, but I would argue that artists discovered NFTs. Artists discovered like, well, shit, people are making all this money with this really shitty artwork. What if the art leveled up? And then they discovered, like, not only can you sell your work globally to a whole new audience that doesn't care about shipping and packaging and, you know, UPS or FedEx. Once they resell that work, you still get money. Not only that, if you launch a collection that's successful and you're an artist that's continually building and creating, you add value to that collection, and then people trade, collect, sell, you know, and exchange that work. You get money in perpetuity. Like I mean, we still, you know, like we minted a project called Nounies, which are basically like nouns with full bodies, and they're like super fun. Like it's basically like if nouns proper, like with the pixelated characters, if you step back and you see the full body of the character, that's what we did. They were hilarious. Like some of them were wearing like thongs and, you know, bunny shoes, and like they're just like super funny. But we only sold, like, it was a collection of like 5,678 pieces, but we only sold like 500 of them or 600 of them. But still, there's like secondary sales. You know, we also, like, we work with the Pizza DAO, and we sold out a collection of pizza people, which are like Nounies with different types of pizza heads. And we sold like as a free mint, so like a creator fee for like $2-3, and we had like 10,000 pieces that we sold. And we're still like, you know, Mark's like, hey, can you check the Magic Internet wallet? And I was like, oh shit, there's $1,000 in there. You know, it's like people are trading, and, you know, it's like you don't expect that when you're selling a piece of artwork, or like when you're selling a toy, you don't get secondary sales on that. So 2021, artists discovered that, and lots of people came in. That's where Frank, you know, like I was literally like, we were all, during the pandemic, we were all hanging out in Clubhouse late at night. There was like usually like maybe 15, 20 people, just kind of chill.
Mhm.
Most of us were like drawing, working, and listening to each other talk, and just kind of had open mics, which is like fucking phenomenal. And I was talking about VeVe, and then Frank's like, wait, I think I know that. You know, I was like, we're talking about VeVe, I was talking about David, and I was talking about digital collectibles to Mitch from Mondo.
Okay.
And Frank was like, wait, I think I know that guy. Hold on a second. Like, you just hear like furniture rumbling, and like he took off, and he's like, comes back like 5 minutes later. He's like, holy shit. He's like, I have a signed contract with David about, I have a signed deal memo. Like, I should call him back up. And like, he like literally like right then and there in the middle of the night, in our group, he just like messaged David, and David got right back to him.
Wow, what a cool story.
And there was also like there's a bunch of us, Jermaine was there, and I think that's where everybody just kind of got like, well, what's this all about? All of that stuff happened 110% because David is the biggest fucking nerd I've ever met, and because of how he's wired, he's an attractor of creative people, because he's really passionate about all sorts of creative things. And he also he's not limited by financial restrictions. He's like, oh shit, that's really cool. Like, what, like, where can I get that? I'm like, dude, it's a 20-foot statue. It's like, I'll take one. He's like, I'll take one of those. Just like, so he was like, he's been collecting toys since we were all starting out in designer toys. Like, he had 11, 12 toy shops in New Zealand. Mm-hmm. So he was actively going to all of the designer cons and San Diego Comic Cons, meeting all of these artists, collecting their work, selling it, not just collecting it, but also selling it and distributing it through his shops. So
right.
It's kind of like, like he's I would love, like, whenever like we had like casual chats, I'd like mention something, he'd like send me a picture of like a piece that he has in his collection.
Ladies and gents, that is going to conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed. As I mentioned at the beginning, this was part 1. We are going to have part 2 dropping tomorrow. And then in terms of part 3, that is going to be a full breakdown of the project and their history done by me. We do also have other announcements that have been made, like the Humanoids comic publisher that has just joined VeVe as well. So I am working on an episode to explain exactly who they are, as well as some other topics as well. But if you guys enjoy the content, make sure to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you want to see in a future episode. And as for our next, I'll catch you then.